A few days ago, a notification popped up on millions of phone screens across the world. It was a picture. Donald Trump, sitting in the Oval Office, surrounded by European leaders, pointing at a map where the stars and stripes didn't just cover America, it swallowed Canada, Greenland, and Cuba whole. Social media laughed. The pundits called it a meme. They called it classic Trump trolling. They scrolled past it. But inside the corridors of power in Ottawa, inside the intelligence briefing rooms, nobody was laughing. Because history has taught us one undeniable lesson. Empires do not joke. First, they declare their intentions. Then, they redraw the maps. This wasn't a meme. This was a notification of foreclosure. What we are witnessing is not a trade war. It is a hostile takeover. It is the beginning of the 51st State Project, not through invasion, but through asphyxiation. I'm History Insight. Welcome to the autopsy of a G7 nation. In geopolitics, there is a brutal, unwritten rule. If you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke those exact words at Davos just days ago. It was meant to be a warning to the world. But it was actually a confession. Because Canada wasn't forced onto the menu. Canada laid itself down on the platter, garnished itself, and handed the knife to the United States. And now, the giant is ready to eat. Let's be clear, this isn't a fairy tale about good nations and bad nations. This is a cold story about leverage, physics, and what happens when a country builds its entire survival strategy on an illusion. For 150 years, Canada slept soundly next to a superpower. They called it the special relationship. They called it the longest undefended border. They entangled their economies so deeply that $2.5 billion in trade crosses that line every single day. It was the model of peace. But in 2025, the model broke. Canada made a catastrophic error. They put 76% of their economic eggs in one basket. In engineering, we call this a single point of failure. When you export 3/4 of your GDP to one customer, you don't have a trade policy. You have a master. But to understand why Canada is collapsing, we have to look away from the maps and look at the streets. Canada is the second largest country on Earth, 10 million square kilometers of land. Yet, it has a population smaller than Tokyo. And somehow, in a land of infinite space, they have engineered a scarcity crisis. In Toronto, the average home price has shattered the $1 million mark. Young Canadians are locked out of their own future. Even government projections admit that doubling construction wouldn't solve it. Prices are set to soar past $1.4 million by 2035. Politicians promise to fix it. Instead, they built a Ponzi scheme based on real estate speculation and unchecked immigration, designed to prop up GDP numbers while the social fabric rotted underneath. Every election cycle, new candidates make the same pledges. Their predecessors broke because solving it would require confronting the developers and property investors who fund their campaigns. So, the cycle repeats, and the anger grows. And then there was the Green Dream. Remember Northvolt, the $7 billion battery plant in Quebec? It was supposed to be the jewel of the new economy. The government poured billions into it. The result? Bankruptcy. The factory was never built. The jobs never materialized. Billions of taxpayer dollars evaporated into thin air. No one went to prison. No one resigned. Just silence. But Northvolt was not an isolated incident. Look at the SAAQ disaster, Quebec's attempt to digitize automobile insurance. A simple project budgeted at $638 million. By 2025, the cost had nearly doubled to $1.1 billion. And the system? It didn't even work. It created chaos. Called it a total failure, citing a rigged bidding process. Again, no accountability. Just hundreds of millions vanished into a broken system. This is the internal rot. A government that could no longer build, no longer deliver, and no longer protect its own wealth. But the true crime happened inside the vault. In 2016, the Canadian government made a decision that historians will study for decades. They sold all of Canada's gold reserves. All of it. Gold doesn't pay interest, they said. US dollars are more practical, they said. Let's do the math that keeps bankers awake at night. Canada sold its gold when it was trading around $1,175 an ounce, generating a paltry $122 million. Today, with gold prices soaring over $4,000, those reserves would be worth more than $132 billion. While Canada was selling, the rest of the world was buying. China added over 300 tons. Russia stockpiled before sanctions hit. Even emerging economies like Poland and Turkey aggressively accumulated gold. Why? Because they understood what Ottawa forgot. Gold is the currency of chaos. Gold is the only asset that holds value when the dollar weapon is turned against you, or gold is insurance against a geopolitical fire. Canada sold its fire extinguisher just before the world caught fire. Today, as the trade war begins, Canada's vault is empty. They hold only paper, mostly US dollars. They are trying to fight an economic war against the United States, using ammunition printed by the United States. The irony is not just tragic, it is terminal. Lived. Then came November 2024. Donald Trump returned. Before he was even inaugurated, he put the tariff weapon on the table, 25%. When Justin Trudeau flew to Mar-a-Lago to negotiate, he didn't walk in as a prime minister. Trump greeted him, perhaps accidentally, perhaps not, as Governor Trudeau. It wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was a statement of hierarchy. February 1st, 2025. The day the music stopped, the tariffs hit. The border, that seamless, invisible line, suddenly became a wall. Supply chains froze. Trucks idled for miles. Canada tried to retaliate, imposing tariffs on $155 billion of American goods. But it was like an ant threatening to stomp on an elephant. Bloga. The impact was immediate devastation. Unemployment climbed from 6.1% to a peak of 7.1% by September. GDP contracted. Business confidence collapsed. And Justin Trudeau, realizing he had no cards left to play, resigned. He warned that Trump wanted a total collapse of the Canadian economy to make annexation easier, but warnings are useless when you have already given away your leverage. Economic collapse does not just empty wallets, it breaks nations. We have to face a hard truth. Canada is not a unified monolith. It is a collection of provinces held together by duct tape. In the west, there is Alberta, the Texas of the north, oil-rich, conservative, and furious. For decades, they felt plundered by Ottawa. Now, looking at a sinking ship, they are asking, why stay? Independence is no longer a fringe theory in Alberta, it is a mainstream conversation. A January 2025 poll found that 18% of Albertans actually supported Trump's annexation proposal. That number is small, but it is growing. Western separatism has never been stronger. In the east, Quebec, the eternal separatist, they stayed in Canada for economic stability. Now that the stability is gone, the old dream of a sovereign nation has roared back to life. The political casualties are already piling up. Just days ago, Quebec Premier François Legault resigned in disgrace after his popularity collapsed to single digits. The Separatist Party Québécois is now leading the polls by a massive margin, promising a new referendum. If one province leaves, the dominoes fall. The Atlantic provinces become an island. British Columbia drifts away. The map dissolves. Enter Mark Carney, the savior, the technocrat. He took over with a bold plan. He tried to reason with Trump. In May, they met, and Trump actually praised him. But the tariffs stayed. The game was rigged. By October 2025, Trump terminated all trade negotiations. Why? Because the province of Ontario ran a TV advertisement criticizing the tariffs. Trump called it interference in American politics and walked away from the table. Think about the fragility of that moment. A relationship built over 150 years was severed over a 30-second television commercial. That is not diplomacy, that is a power play. Carney realized then that the old world was dead. He declared, the old relationship based on deep integration is over. He announced a desperate pivot to the east. He flew to Beijing. He signed a deal to flood the Canadian market with 70,000 Chinese EVs in exchange for agricultural exports. It was a desperate, logical move to find a new customer. Trump's reaction was immediate, and it was final. He didn't send a diplomat. He sent a threat via social media. If Governor Carney thinks he is going to make Canada a drop-off port for China, he is sorely mistaken. He threatened 100% tariffs, a total blockade. It was a mafia ultimatum. You don't get to have other friends. You belong to me. And within days, Carney folded. The China deal was dead. In that moment, Canadian sovereignty didn't just bend, it snapped. So here we are. Canada faces two choices, and neither of them is freedom, or option one, a decade of agony, or attempting to decouple from the US economy, facing poverty, shortages, and a potential civil breakup, all to preserve the idea of independence. Option two, the silent annexation. Accepting that the 49th parallel is just a line on a map, not a border, harmonizing laws, currency, and energy with Washington, or becoming the 51st state in everything but name. This story isn't just about Canada. It's a warning to you, watching this on your phone, in whatever country you live in. Leverage is the only currency that matters. You cannot outsource your security, you cannot outsource your industry, and you certainly cannot build your future on the assumption that a superpower will always be nice to you. Canada didn't lose a war. Not a single shot was fired. They simply forgot that geography is destiny, and when you forget history, you are doomed to become it. I'm History Insight. If you want to understand the mechanics of the world order collapsing before your eyes, subscribe. I'll see you in the next dossier.